Evening and welcome back. We're continuing on 218. We really hope that we'll be able to conclude the chapter, maybe even to start the next chapter, maybe even to begin Epistle 6. It's not, I say chapter, we spoke about this a few times. It's not, it's different than the previous segments of Tanya. These are letters, each one is a separate letter. And of course, in the context of a letter, it's written in a separate time, in a separate circumstance, for a separate circumstance. Even though the message is, of course, timeless, that is, different than the first few segments of Tanya, which it's all written in an order, in a sequence, sequentially. But the Geras HaKodesh, rather, it's called the Holy Epistles, Holy Letters. So we are towards the end of Perik Hey, or Igeres Hey, the fifth letter, the fifth epistle. And that's the second in the original text, that is 218, V'lachein, and therefore Nikru, they're called Tamchei Raisa, the supporters of Torah. What is Tzedakah saying over here? So you have to look in the previous classes. Wherever you're watching it, always, as we mentioned, of course, named for the newcomers, the original website, which is Tanya Online, one word, TanyaOnline.com, where you have all the previous classes lined up. So the last class, I believe this could even be the 9th class on this Igeres, on this letter, on this epistle. We mentioned a few times. This is a lengthier letter. Therefore, that many classes on one letter. But to see what Tzedakah is saying, to say, and therefore what? Just like I say, it's not fair to spend time in the present class with the previous information when it's really just a click away. We always try to recap a bit. We'll do, of course, this so now, but let's try to immediately get the flow, so we'll be able to again conclude. We hope to conclude this letter to fill, namely, this class with the present information. Hopefully, conclude this letter, maybe even to begin the next, as we just mentioned. Therefore, because, as Tzedakah brings that last week, we learned this, that that there's the two types of neshamas which exist by Yidden. He spoke about it. Of course, it's a quote of the Arizal, rather. The Arizal writes, there's two types of neshamas. We pointed out that the Arizal is not telling us how Am Yisrael is in the overall divided. Look around, in every generation, there was those who were involved more in Torah, there was those involved in acts of kindness and in charity and so on. And it existed throughout all of times. The Chidush of the Arizal, where there's two types of neshamas b'Yisrael, which means they have, on a neshama level, a different, so to say, DNA, if you will, a different objective, a different goal, a different mandate. The neshamas are lemdei Torah, and the neshamas are dugnas chasadim. Of course, the lemdei Torah also dugnas chasadim, do acts of kindness, and vice versa. Those who are involved in acts of kindness, of course, they have shiurim in Torah. It's a mitzvah to have a shiur in Torah. In other words, a person must learn Torah, yom v'layla, day and night, and ultimate in the called worse or more practical case scenario, a shiur in the morning, a shiur at night. That's a mitzvah, of course. Someone who's eisig b'gmil sasadim because he puts up a sukkah and his own sukkah, he buys himself a little vanessa, of course he learns Torah. But what is his main objective and goal? Starting from the neshama level, his involvement in tzedakah and gmilas chasadim, in charitable work and extending kindness, and the altibs. This is so vital to bring the hashpah, to bring the energy all the way down to this physical world. For those who learn Torah, unleash the energy because of their chachma. As we mentioned, Hashem spoke creation to being. Ki b'ko Hashem tzuri lamim. But there is the pnimis of dibur, which is associated with the subtlety of the nefesh. A healthy person is a healthy medaber. Someone who his speech is compromised, a mute, for example, it's not that he doesn't have the instruments for where the actual words and sentences are pronounced. He has them perfectly, like any other healthy other human being, but he can't talk. And when he does, he tries to start with his. We mentioned the other day that it's even painful to watch because they try to push through a word where their starting point is through the Heimatis Apeh, we call them throughout the 5 instruments of the mouth. And it's painful for him, painful for people to even watch that. Well, we mentioned, of course, everybody should be gesund and stark. We should only healthy and strong, and we should only use this as a muscle just to understand what Al-Tzedakah is saying over here. Speech comes from the deepest levels of the nefesh. A healthy human being, the nefesh chaya, the Targum teaches, translates l'ruach malol. A healthy person who's able to talk is a nefesh chaya, because speech, of course, begins from the deepest parts of the nefesh. But in order to express itself, express the actual words, of course, you need the Heimatis Apeh, the 5 instruments of the mouth, in order that the word, the sentence, the phrase should come out, should be able to be presented. The other party should be able to hear you. Now, make no mistake, it's not 2 times one the person expresses Chachma, and then the nefesh, and then waits a few minutes, and then he unleashes, so to say, these words through the 5 instruments. No, of course it happens simultaneously. But there's the original hamshach of speech, and then the way it comes into action, the other way it comes into reality. Into reality in the context of speech, that you're able to hear the person, make out the sentence, follows with his suggestion, his or her suggestion, because they put it into words, and the actual words come through the Heimatis Apeh, the 5 instruments. So whatever we're saying now, we're taking a bit more time. Of course, it's you can't understand it, you can't appreciate it, certainly not adequately and accurately. But this is what we just said, you have to go to the previous classes. But the end of that, last week, the Lim dictated to unleash the energy, and it only makes more of an effect on the higher realms. But those who are involved in stoking Mils Chasadim, in charitable work and work of kindness, they are the ones who are similar to executing the word, to bringing or expressing the word, pronouncing the actual word through the 5 Heimatis Apeh, the 5 instruments in the mouth. That's where it becomes a word, a sentence, a phrase, and interacting with other people and so on. And into which this parable points to, the message is that they're the ones who bring the elokus, bring the godly energy down into this world. Blessings in this world, clarity in this world, success in this world. The godly success in this world is, of course, associated with actual physical blessings, spiritual blessings. People are focused. The world is transformed to a domain, a abode for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It doesn't, not only on a spiritual plane, but on a physical plane. People have all the blessings they need in order to learn Torah and do mitzvahs and so on. And ultimately a messianic world, a redemptive world. This is where it makes the difference. You draw the energy and you into the physicality of Elam Haza, similar to the speech. Not only the origination of the speech, or this where the speech originates, which is the healthy dimension of the neshama, nefesh, not talking about the godly soul. A healthy nefesh is able to speak, because that's where the speech initiates from, and that is what in lame dictator people learn Torah. Which Torah is the chachma of HaKadosh Baruch, the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch as Torah, and speech comes from the chachma of the nefesh, as we explained a few times. So Torah comes from that area. So when a person learns Torah, he draws the energy from its from its root, of course. But later, just like the actual speech has to go through the 5 instruments in order to formulate actual words and sentences, so too, in order that the Eliki, the godly light and blessing, should come down into this physical world, of course. That's why you need, namely those who are involved in Tzedakah Mils Chasadim. And again, it's neshamis, and understandably they execute and materialize and implement their mandate to bring the elokus down here into this physical world by occupation, in acts of charity and acts of goodness and kindness. In terms of these, and again, you must see the previous class or classes, or perhaps all the classes pertaining to this chapter to get the flow, to understand where the Alter Rebbe ends up here, Lachain. But in just the connecting point from this from last to the last week's class, therefore they're called the supporters of Torah. This is something which we know that those who extend tzedakah, charity and kindness, usually to support Torah, to support the ones who learn Torah. But in the end of the day, it's actual support, charity, to feed their families. This is where the difference is made in this physical world. So we know they're called supporters of Torah. We say it all the time. And we put back the Sivitera. That those who support Torah are fortunate because they're supporting Torah. But the Alter Rebbe says supporting also has the idea that you support something, now it's standing. The world is standing because of the Ma'aseh Tzedakah Chesed. There's the actual support, a beam for support. You have the support, so it's erected, it's standing, it's standing in a upright position. They bring stability and support to this very physical world. They bring stability to this Elam Hazard, basically we learned before. And also they are the level of Netzel Veda. It says in a number of places, Teimchim, those who Teimchim Teira on the level of these two midas. We know Netzel Veda, two midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We spoke about this many times. Midas is similar to the reason why we have these 7 midas is because that Nishtal Shalom Mehen, it comes from on high. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, primarily, or rather, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Namely, we say midas is the midas of Atzilus, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hoy, Yisoid, Malchus. So Netzach and Hoy, they're called the thighs. And explain a number of places, not to go into it now. What does the thighs do? The thighs do establish the man's upright posture and position. So the Teimchei Torah, those support Torah, they are the Netzach V'Haid. Because again, the idea of Teimchim, it's stable, it's firm, which that comes from usually from the thigh. So that's of the 2 thighs. And again, a number of reasons why they're called the thighs. And the Teimchei Torah are called the Netzach V'Haid because they draw the light of Torah down here to this very physical world. You want to see more about Netzach V'Haid, you could look into we didn't learn it yet, but today it's really a click away anywhere. In 15th chapter of Igeres HaKodesh, we're holding the 5th, 10th chapter is ahead. In the 15th chapter, there's a section of Alter Rebbe explaining every single midah. And there you can draw the parallel, why those who are involved in Tzedakah Chesed, why they called Netzach V'Haid. With this understood, why would tzedakah be called Maisa? Well, of course tzedakah is Maisa. What is tzedakah if not Maisa? Tzedakah is the actual giving. But we know that Maisa is attributed to all the mitzvahs of the Torah. Eat matzah, put on tefillin, put up a mezuzah. There's the action. Why would the pasuk exclude or exclusively rather call charity Maisa? It's like you could have said Shalom V'Hoyat Tzedakah Shalom. That tzedakah will bring peace. We know what tzedakah is. Tzedakah is charity. Why would the pasuk say Maisa had tzedakah? Maisa could be Maisa putting on tefillin. Maisa could be putting up a sukkah, holding a lulav. Why would you identify the mitzvah of tzedakah with Maisa more than any other mitzvah? And in this pasuk, grammatically, should have said V'Hoya had tzedakah Shalom. Tzedakah brings peace. What's Maisa? Maisa had tzedakah. And the answer is again, because this is what tzedakah does. The impact of tzedakah is that it draws the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to this physical world, not only a spiritual light, but a light, an energy of blessing it, which manifests in different levels, different planes, different areas, spiritually, physically, and in all areas. Because the Eir Hashem is the godly energy, which God is only source of blessing. It draws that Eir Hashem to this very physical world, to the Olam Asiyah. There's the four Olamis, which is Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, Asiyah, as we know it. Brought so many places, before even Chassidus Chabad. The Eir Chaim, bring it, the Eir Chaim lived there quite close, but it's brought so many Sfarim, based on Kabbalah and Zayah. There's the four Olamis. The lowest Olam, the world, and we spoke about this, of course, many times, no reason to repeat, you find it in different classes. So, too many to mention at this time, to enumerate at this time. So the Olam drawing the Eir Hashem to, and so this very physical world, this world will be called Olam Asiyah. There's Bria, Yitzir, Asiyah, or Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, Asiyah. Asiyah is this very physical world. So because that is the objective and goal and tchuna of tzedakah and character of tzedakah, to draw Hashem's light to this very physical world known as Olam Asiyah. Now we can understand why the pasuk doesn't say Vayat tzedakah shalim, Vayat Maisa hat tzedakah shalim, because tzedakah is about the Maisa, because you have to draw the light into Olam Asiyah. This is what is so precise and appreciative. This expression, the Zayar brings on this pasuk, if you remember, let's go back to the very beginning of the chapter. Yaz David Shem, it says David may establish himself a name. It says Zayar Kodesh because he says David used to do kindness, mishpat, in other words, brought judgment, brought clarity, brought straightness, made sure that it's working out, made sure that there's that serenity following any dispute, and if it needed to be an extension from one party to another, or from other parties to one party, or vice versa. And tzedakah, of course, tzedakah was actual charity, actual extension of giving, of one's extending himself in charitable work, or actually giving charity. So this is the mishpatut tzedakah, which David did, l'cholimei, whoever's with him. And it says, if Shimon cried, it says, who is the one who makes Hashem's name? That's the one who gives tzedakah to the poor every day. Makes Hashem's name? What's that supposed to mean? What does it mean? Ovid Shmo Kadisha? So the simple meaning is, not really a question, because you erect Hashem's name, you establish Hashem's name, as Shimon was saying, because Hashem's name is incomplete till you give tzedakah. This is a simple understanding of it. Because Hashem appreciates and desires tzedakah, so when you give tzedakah, you extend yourself to the poor, you extend yourself in charitable work, in actual charity, giving charity, extending kindness, you are connecting, you're erecting Hashem's name. But why the word Ovid? Why the word you're making, you're doing Hashem's name? What's that supposed to mean? But now we understand it perfectly. Because you want to establish the Ovid, you want to bring it down to this world, which is the objective and goal of tzedakah, because, as he's going to explain, to bring it down into this very physical world. So you're doing Hashem's name, meaning to say you're bringing Hashem's name into the world of action. That's the simple reason why the Lashon Maisei Hatzdaka, and later when Reb Shimon says, who is the one which erects Hashem's name? That's the one who gives tzedakah every day to the poor. I think he says B'chol Yom, yes, every day to the poor. Why I say Avit Shma Kadisha? Because this is the whole point, is to make, mean to say that it could be connected. You're servicing, you're serving, you're servicing, you're establishing, you're erecting. You are bringing about in this very physical world the Shema Kadisha, Hashem's holy name. Because this is the whole point of Tzedakah Milsa Sadim, as he explained before. There's the Torah, which brings it from the Pnimius, and it has more a relevance, it has more an impact, rather, on the spiritual plane, as Al-Tzedakah says in the previous class. Again, the click away, but in order to bring it down to this very physical world, it has to be associated with the Chitzeni, with the externality of speech, which is the Heimet Sapeh, the 5 instruments of the mouth. The 5 instruments of the mouth make the difference. That's where you have structure in words. We mentioned the other day that someone's lips are compromised. It's right away sensed immediately in the person's pronunciation of those letters associated with the lips, which is the bays, the mem, the vav, the pay. Someone's tongue is compromised. You immediately hear it because you don't have clear words. So as much as these these 5 instruments of the mouth are external, together with that, they are the ones that formulate the words. And to formulate the words, you know what the other party said, and the clearer it comes out, the clearer you get it, the quicker you get it, and the quicker you're able to execute. If it's a question, if it's a request, and so on, there's an interaction between parties because of the clarity of words. There's an interaction between the God's light and this very physical world through the actual words. The chitzenius of speech, the externality of speech, which is the 5 instruments kaviyachol of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mouth, which is again nimshach, it's drawn, and it's becomes manifest through those who are involved in tzedakah, because they're doing Hashem's name. Because this is the point of tzedakah that establishes Hashem's name on the level of asiyah, the level where doing it is, in other words, where the tangibility of Elam has, the place of Ovid is, Maisa is, because the point is that you come down into Elam Asiyah. As he goes on, he says, because through the arousal from below, with charity and kindness from below, tato, you arouse the supreme kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to draw them to the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from the supreme Chochmah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the Yud of Shem Hashem. Right? There's the Yud K Vav K. You have to establish Avit Shmo Kadisha. You have to combine. You have to make sure that Eir, which comes from the Yud, evolves and comes down and makes the impact on the Hey, Yud K Vav K, which is the Hey Tata. That's the Chitzenis of the Dibur. That's where the letters are formulated. That's the Hey Maitis Apeh. So you want to draw, when you give tzedakah, you arouse the chesed elyon, the supreme chesed to draw the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from the level of chachmilah, which is the source of speech, as we said. Again, you have to see the previous classes. Even though we did encapsulate the idea of the healthy person speaks, the healthy person speaks not because he has the 5 instruments, because he has a healthy chachma shemenefesh, as we see this evidently. Examples we just gave. So you do chesed, you're drawing from that level of the supreme chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Yud Shem Hashem. B'chinas hadibur v'ruach piv yisbarich, be into the level of dibur, into the hay. Sorry, yichach below Yud Shel Shem. You draw it from the Yud. I thought something was missing over here. Lehei Shel Shem, to the hay of the holy name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. B'chinas hadibur, which is speech, v'ruach piv yisbarich, and Hashem's the uttering of Hashem's mouth, blessed be He, kedei lashpil el masiyah, in order to make an impact, an imprint, namely to draw the light into this very physical world, which represents the Heitata as explained. So you have to draw the air from the Yud all the way to the Hey. And that's the way you're establishing your Ovid Shmo Kadisha, you're establishing Hashem's name, erecting Hashem's name. Which again justifies the words, or tells us the accuracy of the Pasuk and the Bachar Reb Shimon. This is what Reb Shimon commented on the Pasuk. The focus is Maisat Tzedakah Ovid Shmo Kadisha, because you bring the shleimus of Hashem's name from the Yud of Hashem, again, through doing kindness and through doing chesed, as explained. So then you draw the Eir Hashem, the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Yud from the Yud of Shem to the Hey, which is Dibur, which is speech, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's breath, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Ruach, which ultimately brought creation into being. Basar Ma'amoris Nivra Elam V'ruach Piv Kol Tzava Midvar Hashem Shamayim Nasu. And everything was created by Basar Ma'amoris. So you draw it into the Hay, into the Ma'amoris, into the Dibur, Kedei Lashpil and Masiyah, to provide, to draw the light into this very physical world. Which is again through your Yisaidus of Chesed Tata, when you extend yourself with kindness and charity, so you are Mamsha from the Yud all the way to the Hay. And the Hay again is the Dibur of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have it, to draw the energy into Elam Asiyah. Similarly, that a person does not speak to others, only to others. The whole point of speech is to relate to others. When a person on his own doesn't speak. It's interesting. Today, you said we're walking down the street 30 years ago. You would say that something is wrong. They're talking to somebody, they're talking to themselves. People do not talk to themselves today. It's a different story because they're probably talking to another party. So it's not doesn't resound awkward. But in the past, it did, because it is awkward. Because the whole point of speech is just to relate to another party. Why are you talking to yourself? You know exactly the information, what you're conveying via speech prior to speech. When you're talking about another party which has no idea what you're thinking, they could sense sometimes your attitude towards things, but they don't have clarity in what you're thinking. So you need to talk it out. You need to put this into phrases, into words that they should be able to relate. You should be able to interact. You should be able to engage in conversation in order to connect, and he should know what you're thinking. You should know what the other party is thinking. Because that's what speech is all about. It's not for yourself. Because you know exactly, you usually know what you're up to without speaking. And what's else did I be getting at? It's about the other party. It's about the Elam Asiyah vis-a-vis the higher spiritual planes, the higher spiritual worlds. It's medaber lachem. The whole speech is meant to be expressed to another party. Now, I just want to mention, we had some similar to this in the past, and was asked. I mean, people sometimes, review something even though no one's around, so they pretty much know the information, but they utter the words when they review it. Sometimes a few sentences, a person has to get clarity in a certain matter. If it's a mathematic matter, or a matter of Tatus, you just kind of repeat it yourself. So you use your speech just to bring clarity to yourself. Granted, that's true. But the whole idea, the whole notion of speech is meant to interact with another party, not when you're by yourself. You can pretty much do it without speaking. Sometimes speech helps, especially it's explained in Chassidus, that the source of speech, I mean, we see it over here, the source of speech is really on a very deep level of the nefesh. So when you talk something out, you're drawing from the nefesh to gain that clarity that you need to have the hands-on, with conspicuousy, and clarity. So there's something that you put into speech. But the whole point of speech, the whole phenomenon of speech, the whole notion of speech is not for yourself. You pretty much know. You gain clarity, but generally, no, you know exactly what you're up to. You don't need to talk it out. I am hungry. You're hungry, so you're hungry. You don't have to say it. When you want to have an impact on another party, I am hungry, please prepare me food, or I am hungry, please give me the $1 so I can buy myself lunch. He or she doesn't know what you're thinking. So you say, I am hungry because this should have an impact on the other party to help you out, to quench your thirst and to soothe your hunger. But to yourself, you know you're thirsty, you know you're hungry without saying those words. So the whole phenomenon of speech is for other people, not for yourself. And what happens then? And of course, Tzedakah right away he's getting at. And this world, the Elam Asiyah, is considered an acher, another party in comparison to the spiritual worlds. Even the spiritual worlds, which are really not part of the Atzilus dynamic, not part of the Koralakus dynamic. They're a world, they're Bria, they're Yitzira, they're Asiyah. It's not Atzilus, but they're really not yet called Acherim, because it's really all in the spiritual plane. Bria is Elam Ganedna, Elyon, as we said, Yitzira is Ganedna, Tachten, the Talmud, the Talmud is connected to Elam Bria, Mishnah in Elam Yitzira, it's in the lower world, but Al-Tanam explains already in Perik Nun Beis and Kuti Amorim, the connection to Mishnah elsewhere as well, the connection to Mishnah, Chafhei, and Gersa. We didn't learn the previous this latter, the former. We did learn Nun Beis in Kuti Amorim, also a click away. So these are all, the Tzedakah mentions it over here in this chapter, of course. It's all on a spiritual plane. So there's something of the Atzma. Atzilus, of course, Atzilus represents HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Atzilus houses the Ein Sof. Not Bria, not Yitzira. But nonetheless, it's a holy world. There's Kedusha. There's a certain bli gvulin in El Mabria. Neshamas nenim yesh menenim zimer v'zim ashchina ganena elyon. It's a very great a place which is very close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So as much as it's not Atzilus, which is the unadulterated purity of Elokus, which is housed in El Matzilus, which is the spirit and the ambience of El Matzilus versus Bria, it's a whole different. It says in another place, the Parsa Hamafsik, the partition between El Matzilus and El Matzilus, it's a difference. It's not just a lower world. Bria is not just a lower world. It's a world which is totally different than El Matzilus. So from a certain perspective and point of view, it's also going to be called an Acher. So speech, which starts in Malchus Atzilus for that matter, extends itself to the Acher, to Elam Abriya. Much more so to Elam Yitzira. Even Elam Asiyah Ruchnis. But he says, no, can't compare. You can't compare because in the end of the day, this is all spiritual. This is all of this. The Ganeda Elyon is has a whole memory, Mishir Hashim, the revelation of Ganeda. It's a Gili Otzum of the Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And even Ganeda Tachtin. Anything on a spiritual plane, of course, is part of the Atzma, is part of the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The real Acherim, the real others, other party of fabric, which is no comparison to the way things are on high. Like Elamazah Gashmi, have a dire world, like the Alter Rebbe has in La Perek Lamed Vav, famous expressions of the Alter Rebbe, Perek Lamed Vav, Lukuti Amorim, a click away, Lukuti Amorim, the first segment. The present segment is the fourth. A world which, with chutzpah, with audacity, denies its own energy, its own receiving of the energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to make it what it is. It's not just like something has its independence and someone's helping you. You have whatever you need and someone drops in $100 in the month to you. So of course you recognize it. You don't ignore or you don't camouflage that additional funds as an example. What if he throws you in $500 a month, $1,000 a month, $5,000 a month? But it's on top of who you are, your success, your work, your investment, and that's a bonus. It's just unjust to deny that person who's helping you, that party is helping you, that those parties are helping you, especially when it's serious amounts of funds in order to sustain, to pay your bills and so on and so forth, to live normal. It's just chutzpah to ignore or to deny the reality that's going on from when you knew yourself. Every month you get the staple of this amount of money as an example. But this is far beyond. The whole mitzias of Elam Hazeh, from A to Z, is only because the Eir Hashem. It's only because Hashem is pumping energy, especially it's every moment he's pumping energy into creation. That creation should exist. So the mere existence of creation is because the Eir Hashem, because Hashem is making it happen. And how does Elam Hazeh react to it? Tell me if this is not the classic Acher. The other party, Elam Hazeh react like, what? God? Who's God? Alter Rebbe brings this quote from Pari. I'm self-made. Don't talk to me about, like Pari actually said, Mi Hashem who's God that I should listen to? Look at denial. I made denial. You made denial. You made nothing. But that's the chutzpah of Elam Hazeh, the chutzpah of Pari, which embodies the chutzpah of Elam Hazeh. Don't talk to me about anything spiritual. Don't talk to me about anything. You exist because right now it's not Hashem created you in the 6 days of creation. Right now He's constantly creating. Every moment, every rega, Hashem is creating you from nothing to something. Ex nihilo. How are you reacting to it? God? What are you talking about? And He has to come down into this world and toil with Elam Hazeh and take away the different layers which cover up, which eclipse and camouflage the emes Hashem, and introduce the emes Hashem Laila. Of course, learning Torah in this physical world with his brain, physical brain, and involving the matter and the Torah, which involves matters of Elam Haza. When you learn about it, you're taking away the chutzpah. You're taking away layers of chutzpah of Elam Haza. Especially when you do a mitzvah, you take the Elam Haza itself. The physicality of this world is what you deal with, and you transform it to a chetishal mitzvah. The skin of the animal becomes parchment for tefillin, for the Sefer Torah, for a mezuzah. Sefer Torah. You're bringing the truth, you're revealing the truth, you're introducing even more of godly energy into this very physical world. And you're successful with it. Am Yisrael is successful with it collectively. Like it says in Mashiach will come by Hashem Melech HaKol Haaretz. Hashem will reign over the entire land, not on the base of Medrash or the Shul. But the entire world will be filled with a godly reality, based on our involvement, of course. Based on our investments. Investment. Emes Hashem Leilam. But what are we starting with? We're starting a world which has chutzpah to deny its own creator, its own energy, its own existence. See the Lashon, Lamed Vav in his famous expression of Alter in Tanya. He says, of course, he gets to the point, and this is the ultimate objective, that Hashem wanted a dwelling place in this very physical world, in a tachteinim, in a lowly world, a world of chutzpah. That's where Hashem wants his ikir dirase, his main living quarters should be in this very physical world. B'tachteinim, in a lowly world, in a world of chutzpah. We have to bring in Hashem to diffuse the chutzpah, to bring about a complete image of the way things really are, which is the truth of Hashem, and imbue them both and infuse them together. And the world becomes a domain for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The synthesis between God and Elam. But that takes the Avodah, takes the service of Yid by default. It's the opposite. The world does whatever it can to deny the Creator. So what is the real Acherim? Could you compare the Acherim talking to the other party? You're talking about Bri Yitzir, holy worlds. This is part of the Atzmei of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Is it the true core Atzmei? Atzmei, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is formed so by himself. No, that's the Atzilus dynamic. Not the Bri Yitzir Asiyah. But you still can't justify the terminology Acherim. Acherim Zelam Asiyah. So the whole speech is the whole speech is meant to be there for other parties, as we just explained, not for the person for himself. And what happens then? Then he condenses his thoughts, his intellect and his thoughts when he speaks, when he conveys, when he talks to them. Because it has to go into words. If you're not going to condense your mind, your thoughts, and try to put it to the words will not be the right container for those thoughts, for that intellectual concept that you want to convey. So in order, those words should be structured, and they should convey what you're thinking and what you're understanding, and what you're trying to ultimately convey. You have to mitzam, so of course you have to contract your seichel and put it into the right words. Like someone says, I'm going to put it into words. What happened before? No, you see, I'm not getting it. I'm not understanding it until you'll put it into words. What does it mean putting into words? Could you just take the seichel, the machshava, the way it is, and just put it together, mesh it together? No, usually you see the people don't have that ability to put a seichel, an insight, or a thought into words. No one understands it. The other party doesn't understand it. You tried to put it into words, but the words did not contain this because you didn't contract the seichel. You didn't contain that thought, because thought is really part of who you are, which is, and to put that whole energy of thoughts and deep insight and put into dry words from the Heimatzis Hapeh, it's not a container for it. This is too deep and this is too shallow. So what you have to do is you have to contract. Of course, you have to contract your seichel, contract your thought, and then put it into words in order to give it over to the other party. The other party needs achayim, the other party will be able to understand. Here you're talking about the great tzimtzum of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which comes into the end, into this world, to the Eilam HaSiyah, through Hashem's speech. But this is the part of the speech, the externality of speech. The speech associated not with the Chochmah Shebenefesh, to the contrary, that's the Yud Shem Havaya. You have to draw from the Yud Shem Havaya all the way into the externality of speech, meaning to say into the five instruments which produce the letter, pronounce the letter, pronounce the word, pronounce the sentence. And then the other party could appreciate what is classically the other party in this physical world, as we just explained. This is the true, real achedim. But that's the point of Medaber. The whole dibur is there for achedim. That's connected to Heimetzah. And who puts it, who establishes the Ovid Shmo Kadisha? Those who are part of the Ovid, they establish, they erect the Hashem's holy name because they're drawing from the Yud to the K to the Vav, but namely to the K. Those who are involved in Stucking Mil Chasadim, even more than those who learn Torah, which they of course unleash the energy of the Yud, but it should come down into the Dibur, which is there meant to be Lachedim, the true, the completion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. That's through Maisa Tzedakah, because you have to bring the Eid Eliki down into this Maisa, down into this physical world. Similar to the energy of the speech, it's not enough the space or the area before it enters the five instruments. Yeah, you unleashed it from your seichel, from your chochmah shebenefesh, from where the speech initiates from. Of course, that's where it comes from. That's where the main idea of speech is, even beyond the five instruments of the mouth. We explained again in the mashal of the mute. What's wrong? He has anything wrong with his five instruments? No, everything is perfect like the healthy human, but he can't talk. Because speech does begin in the chochmah of the nefesh. Of course it does. But that yet remains on a spiritual plane, on a transcendent plane, metaphysical plane. You have to put it into words. You have to put it into the chitzenius of dibur. You have to put it into through the five instruments of the mouth, in order that these structured words should be pronounced and that should make an impact on another person, or the other person should be able to understand it, appreciate it, do something about it. The dibur is la'achedim. The whole idea of the dibur is la'achedim. Therefore, it's manda ovit shmo kadisha and maisat tzedakah. Because the point of tzedakah is to bring it down to olam ha'asiyah ha'gashmis, to this very physical world, which comes, of course, to tzedakah b'chesed, as explained in the previous classes.